Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharne Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paskatya Deshatarne Om Agnya Timrandasya Giranjana Salakaye Chaksur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances in the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas in our line. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the devotees of Iskcon Houston Temple. And I am very sad that I'm not here presently waiting for your program, but we're creating this videotape in the hopes that we can glorify Srila Prabhupada with some of the stories that maybe some of you haven't heard. Hare Krishna. So a little bit first about probably myself and the relationship with Prabhupada. When I was 13 years old, I made a vow that I wanted to know what the absolute truth is. And for about 6-7 years, I stopped reading any fiction and studied through all the New Testament, Old Testament, Quran, all the different basically Western and eventually Indian traditions as well. So I had a crisis, and after I was in my college, I had a crisis that I didn't know who God was, even though I studied for 7 years, and very stringently. So I remember I was tearing and praying to God, I don't know who you are, please show me. And so consecutively, one day, I was a football player and a student body president at my university. And the devotees came on campus in the free speech area. This was my first opportunity of getting a book from Prabhupada. The devotees, Dina Bandhu and his wife, Akruti, were chanting on campus, and they were distributing books. And there was one Christian heckler was making all sorts of noise and telling me to go to hell and stuff like that, and I actually wanted to hear what they had to say. So I remember coming up to him in my football jersey, and I gave him to the count of 3, either you move or I'm going to plant you in the ground. So the devotees appreciated that. They gave me my first back to Godhead, which was like 1968. So still I was looking and somehow or other, that was the first time I met devotees. I hadn't seen them for a while. I had sent off to Mayapur, I don't know how or why, and I received the books from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhakti Siddhanta, most of the books you find from the Gaudiya Math. And I had been reading those, but I didn't have any association with devotees. So at my college, one day I was praying so hard that please let me know who you are. I went to the bookstore, and at the bookstore I picked up a book. Same tradition, I'd read so many of the religious books, I don't think there was hardly anything there, and a book fell on my head. And that book was the Bhagavad Gita as it is, the first edition, Macmillan edition by Srila Prabhupada in 1968. And I put it back on the shelf. I said, yeah, I've heard of this before. And put it back on the shelf, and reached for the other book, and again the Bhagavad Gita came and fell on my head. So I'm not being completely unaware. I said, I'm probably supposed to read this. So as I was reading the Bhagavad Gita, all my questions had been answered. And I remember my hairs were standing on end. I was sweating profusely, and I was getting these confirmations left and right that yes, this is true, this is true. But being the doubting Thomas that I am and was, I decided that after, this is the greatest book I've ever read, but I said at that time, back in the late 60s and early 70s, there was all sorts of bogus gurus. I don't have to name them all, like Rajneesh and Guru Maharaji, all the different bogus gurus. And so I go, I don't know who this A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada is, so I'm going to challenge him. I'm going to try to meet him and challenge him if he's a real guru. Not a great idea to do, but this is Prabhupada. Most people, he'll tell you the story about the rose, how they met Prabhupada, and how Prabhupada was so kind to him. I went as a Kshatriya-like person, and I made 4 qualifications, that if you're a true guru, he's going to have these 4 qualifications. So somehow I ran into a devotee, and I was in San Diego, and he said, Prabhupada's coming to Los Angeles that weekend. So I was fairly wealthy, so I decided I'm going to test God and see, I'm going to hitchhike down. Never hitchhiked in my life because I had cars and stuff like that. So I sat on the outside of my campus, stuck my thumb out, and the second car came by, picked me up, and drove me all the way to 2.5 hours back from San Diego to Los Angeles, dropping on the corner of Watsika and Venice, right where the temple is. I thought, this is pretty good. You know, hitchhiking was a good thing. Dropped me right in front of the temple. As I walked from the temple, there was Prabhupada's secretary at that time, I didn't know who he was, Shama Sundar, was standing out in front of the temple, and he says, and I was the only one walking toward the temple on the sidewalk, and he says, do you want to meet with Srila Prabhupada? Of course, that was my ambition at that time. I said, yes. And I didn't know who he was, and I didn't know where I was. I'd never been to the temple before. So he took me around the side of the Los Angeles temple on Watsika Boulevard, and we walked up the stairs on the side of the temple and came into Prabhupada's room. And just in the darshan room next to where Prabhupada was sitting, he was sitting on a table, and I was sitting on a nice dais, and there was a table in front of him, and there was all sorts of, there was probably about 15 or 20 devotees that were all in that room. There was a bunch of sticks. I had no idea what dandas were. So a bunch of sticks. So I came in, and they pointed me to sit in the back, and I had long hair, and my legs were well too developed playing football. I couldn't sit in a cross-legged position very easily. So as soon as I sat down, I said, I'm ready to challenge Prabhupada, really to challenge him now, if he's a real guru. And Prabhupada looked around the room. They were playing one of his newest albums, and I remember a couple of the devotees teary-eyed, and I thought that was kind of interesting, and I wondered what all the sticks were. And then Prabhupada looked around the room, and he looked at me and goes, why are you a Kripana? Of course, I had no idea what a Kripana was. And I made this vow, the 4 reasons that I see the qualifications for why I came up with those, who knows. But I said, you have to know what the absolute truth is. You have to know what the method is for the absolute truth. This comes from my long period of study. You have to be able to read my mind, which, anyway, where that came from. And you have to be able to predict the future. Those are my qualifying aspects of Prabhupada. Prabhupada immediately turned and chanted at and yelled at me, why are you a Kripana? And then he said, Kripana is opposite of Brahma, because I didn't know what Kripana meant. And I'm thinking, what's Kripana? You know, and he's answering me without, and I haven't said anything. Kripana means miser. It is opposite of Brahmana. And he said, you have abilities, but you're not using them for Krishna, therefore you are a Kripana, you are a miser. And I was like, he's calling me a miser? And then I'm thinking, and then I'm just thinking this, and immediately he starts speaking about what the absolute truth is. He starts identifying that the supreme absolute truth is the reservoir of Bhagavan Shri Krishna and Brahmane Parmiti Bhagavati Savite, and he started giving the definition. Then he started immediately into the processes bhakti. So my, 1, 2 of my things are just, my little qualifications are turning over one after the other, and I haven't even opened my mouth, luckily. And then so I'm still angry that Prabhupada called me a Kripana, and Prabhupada's just knocking down my qualifications for a guru one after another. So I was banking on this. I was realizing I must be reading my mind, because all the things I'm saying is just being read, and I haven't even said hello or anything. So I'm still banking on the point, well, it hasn't predicted the future. It hasn't predicted the future. So just then he had called Pradyumna, which was his Sanskrit secretary, and they said something up in the front. And meanwhile, during that whole thing, I remember Karandar and Jayatirth and all the devotees made this parting of the Red Sea. So there was a direct line from Srila Prabhupada to me in the back. Everyone was kind of wondering, I hope he's not talking to me, and they realized they're talking to this guy they'd never seen before in the back of the room. So they parted the sea, and of course there's this direct aisle now between Prabhupada and me in the back. And Pradyumna goes back out, and he comes back into the room, in Prabhupada's room, with the biggest book I've ever seen in my life. If you've ever seen that, what Prabhupada translated from Srimad Bhagavatam, that there's lists of the 10 different acharyas, the Gaudiya and the Vaishnava acharyas, and their commentaries, and I had put it in one big book, and he was carrying it in like, with both hands. It was so big. Anyway, Prabhupada turned to the 12th canto, and no one had ever heard the 12th canto before in the Western world. And then Prabhupada started explaining the predictions for the age of Kali. That people think they're beautiful having long hair, there'll be no milk and rice and sugar, you won't have justice unless you have money. He's just listing off, one after the other, all the qualities and what's happening in the Kali, what will happen in the Kali Yuga, what they found in the 12th canto. And I was, of course, just blown away. And luckily I hadn't said anything. Prabhupada just sort of ringed me out and gave me the thunderbolt. So at that point he finished, and no one knew who I was, or what, why I was just getting, assassinated there by Prabhupada. So I was kind of still angry that he called me a creep, and so I ran down the stairs, back out the temple before anyone could talk to me, back out to the street, and I figured, I don't know, if hitchhiking's pretty easy, you stick your thumb out, and someone takes you exactly where you want to go. Well, anyway, they actually did that. I stuck my thumb out. About 2-3 cars later to our stop, and tell them where I'm going to go back to Long Beach, my parents' house. So they drove me out to where my parents' house. So my impression of hitchhiking at that time was, was like immediately driving where you're at. I mean, it was just Krishna's mercy. So when I went home, I was thinking, I was going over my head what Prabhupada was saying, and realizing then the other side coming up goes, what are you arguing about? You went to see if you went to see a real guru, and you got defeated, by the scriptures, and everything he said was true, so why are you, what are you doing? What's your thing? So I realized after tossing and turning that night that I have to surrender, and I wasn't used to surrendering. In my college I could defeat most people in logic. So I drove back the next morning to Los Angeles from Long Beach, about an hour drive, and I wrote a check out for $1,000 to A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So I went into the gift shop, just like we have a gift shop here, they had a gift shop there. And I met with Rameshwaran Karandar, who was the temple president. Rameshwar, of course, was doing the books and things there. And I wrote this check out. $1,000 check in 1969 was probably one of the bigger ones that they saw. So they, you got to bring this up to Prabhupada. And I go, no, that's okay. I was frightened of Srila Prabhupada because I got killed the day before. So I said, no, you can bring it. He said, it's at least wait here. So I waited, and of course Rameshwar was piling me up with a bunch of books to take home to read. And then when Karandar came down, he told me, Prabhupada said to tell you that you have understood. So this was my introduction to Srila Prabhupada, is when I accepted him as my spiritual master, having been beaten. So I'm more of a Kshatriya-like person. So I came in with this challenging the sword, and I got the sword back and destroyed without even opening my mouth. So most people don't come to Prabhupada challenging and hang around too much. So I was lucky that Prabhupada, gave me what I needed, but also was merciful enough to let me stay. So the next time I saw Srila Prabhupada, I had become a bhakta, and we were preaching as a bhakta at the San Diego temple. We made probably about 4 or 5, we made about 8 devotees. Well, I was still a bhakta that joined before I did. And Bhaktidas was the president, and he said, let's fly up to the San Francisco Rath Yatra. So we flew up I paid for it, and we flew up to San Francisco Rath Yatra when Prabhupada was being present. And at that point in time, when we landed, we went to in San Francisco, we met with Jayananda. I went to the temple room. He said, I'm going to park the car and get some stuff. You go and see if you can find Jayananda, who was like the temple president at that time. So I walked in the temple room. This is a side story, but there was this devotee sweeping the floors and mopping the floor of the temple room. And as soon as he saw me, hey, can you come here, come here a second. So he had me take out the garbage and had me start sweeping. And I said, I'm looking for Jayananda. He says, oh yeah, I'll introduce him to you in a while. Can you please sweep over there? And he engaged me about an hour's worth of service until Bhaktidas came back, and Bhaktidas came, Jayananda. So this is the nature of Jayananda too. He would engage anybody he would see in the service of Krishna, and so merciful that. So that was my first meeting with Jayananda. And many meetings after that, every time there was a Rath Yatra, 2 or 3 times in San Francisco, And then also in New York, Prabhupada was so kind to us from when we became the library party. He would call Satsrupa, he would call Ganesham, later became Bhakti Tirtha Swami, and myself, and Prabhupada would take an bite of orange, and he would eat part of it, and then call us up one by one and give us the orange that he ate. So he did this 3 or 4 times to us, so we were so fortunate. Then when we sat down, he called us back up again, and he'd smell a rose, and he'd smell the rose, and we'd come back and he'd take the different rose, he'd smell it, then he'd have our right hands come out, and he'd give us the rose. So I had kept, the rose from San Francisco, I don't know, about 30 years until it totally disintegrated in my Bhagavad Gita, but Prabhupada was so kind giving us Mahama Prasadam. Later he did that in New York as well. He was so thankful for the library party stuff he was doing. So in the course of that, Srila Prabhupada we were traveling all over the United States and doing college preaching with Satsrupa Maharaj's party, and we had ended up in Boston, and we got a phone call when we were setting up. Satsrupa went to become Srila Prabhupada's secretary, and then we were in New Haven, and Jayadvaita Swami came to join us for preaching, and we get a phone call from Rameshwaram in India saying, you are now part of Prabhupada's book party, and you and Bhakti Tirtha and some of the other members of our team are now, that were Satsrupa Maharaj's team, are now Prabhupada's book party. First called book party, and later it became the BBT library party. And then they told us, I asked them, what is our service? And he goes, you have tons of people already distributing books all over the devotees, all over the world, all over the United States, all over the world distributing. So he says, this is special. You're going to be visiting universities and libraries, and you're going to be doing standing orders. And I asked, what's a standing order? He said, that's when you sell all the books that Prabhupada's going to sell. Is going to have multiple volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam and multiple volumes of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I think this time there's 2 volumes out on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then they said, well, you're going to be doing that to universities and colleges and stuff like that's what your service is going to be. And I said, okay, well, he said, but there's only 2 volumes of the Bhagavatam now, 2 or 3 or whatever, it wasn't very much. He says, yes, so you're going to sell the rest of them. And then the other one you said, Chaitanya, we don't even have that book. Yes, that's going to be translated. So how are we going to sell it? We're going to sell books that aren't even published yet? And he said, yes, Prabhupada wants you to do that. And I go, well, what are we going to show them? He goes, we're going to send you 2 book covers. So that time they sent us, via air post from India or Los Angeles, I'm not sure where it came from, but there was two dust, book jackets just to cover. Their books weren't even printed, and it had, Lord Chaitanya front, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhakti Swami Prabhupada. They didn't even use that book cover when the Chaitanya Charitamrita came out, but they printed this one and gave it to us. So this was the birth of the library party and the standing order. So the next day, I said, okay, we were in New Haven, so I went to Yale University. Not knowing really what I'm supposed to do or how to do this, we went and talked to the librarian and showed the dust jacket and a Srimad Bhagavatam and told him some of the Gita. And the librarian said, yes, I'll take them all. And I was more shocked than I think that anyone was going, excuse me. So I had a regular PO we made out of our own, luckily he had something too. And we wrote out all the Prabhupada's books. He took all of Prabhupada's books, and they took the ones that we had in Srimad Bhagavatam and the standing order for all the rest. And then he took the Chaitanya Charitamrita standing order. I told him there was going to be 12 volumes. I had no idea how many volumes were going to come out in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we said, I think it'd be 12. So he took a standing order of all the books. I'm coming back with a book order of all these different things. We called Prabhupada back up. That Mahabudhi went out. The first day after he told me to do it, he went to Yale University and took every single book, plus standing orders of Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada was so pleased. I was kind of in shock, because I didn't. And then the librarian told me the process, how to go through all this. I was very fortunate that I met him first, probably. So he gave the whole process what librarians need and how to do stuff. So we kind of learned the science, right there when we were in New Haven. But we decided we're probably not going to go visit the biggest universities again first, just because we don't really know what we're doing first. We're going to go to Philadelphia, and then we'll start with some of the smaller ones. Of course, those are all good ones around there too. So that's how that started. So Prabhupada had us do with became the library party, and of course, as part of the library party, from then on for the next, we got to meet with Prabhupada and go on walks with him. He was so happy. He would always write. We would write him sometimes. So we were always in the Sankirtan newsletter. So month after month after month, Prabhupada would read these, and he'd have Rameshwar do it. So I got to think I was pretty, hot. I think I was really good. I'm the doer. So as a brahmachari, not a very good idea to come with. So and just now we did that for the whole year. Every month we were in it. So 1975, Prabhupada came to Chicago to install Kishori. And at that time there was about a Damodar party, for those of you that are coming from Tamal's period. They were there with all their buses, all the BBT library party, with our 5 or 6 vans were all there. And the devotees came from Toronto and Canada and St. Louis, all the different converged in Chicago when Prabhupada came. So, and when Prabhupada got there, we of course met with him. We got the chance of meeting with him and go on the morning walk, so on. He was there for about 3 or 4 days. So like the first day, and anyone who's ever been on walks with Prabhupada, and we've been on so many, knew better than what I did, you never stand behind Prabhupada. Because Prabhupada stops on a dime. He would just stop so I made the mistake, and I ran into Prabhupada. Prabhupada looked at me like, what kind of disciple are you? So that happened. Then in the next day, he was having some interview, and they didn't have a book table. So if you're around Prabhupada, you always have to set up a book table. So for press and different people that you have it. So they set up a book table, but at that time, the TV cameras were on, and Srila Prabhupada had told Harikesh told all my disciples, they all pay full dandavats whenever they come in front of me. So of course, TV cameras was rolling, all this stuff in there, so I came in from the back and I did sort of my namaskars instead of full dandavats. After Prabhupada had just told the cameraman, the whole audience, that all of his disciples. So I kind of did the namastes and moved over to a seat. So Prabhupada got very angry. He said something to Harikesh that I approached later, and Harikesh wouldn't tell me what he said. It's not very nice. He was very angry at you for, after he told that. So that happened. And the next morning we were introducing the library party, because we had a bunch of new members and all the things. He was so happy to see all the things, the success was going on. So Satsrit was introducing all the different members. And of course he knew some of us already from services. And he got, this is Gokul, oh, this is going on. He's going over the different names, and then Satsrit goes, this is Mahabudhi, and he just looked at me and he just went on next. So I was like, hung my head down. I was like, God. And so that happened, and then that next morning, there was a huge guru puja. You can imagine there was like 500 people in the temple room where they were installing Kishori, this big, huge guru puja. I remember Vishwakarma was the president of Toronto, and him and Uddhama Shloka, one was president, one was vice president, which one's which. But anyway, they had this big bhajan kirtan group, and so it was really ramping up this kirtan. And I remember Ramakeli, Guru Kripa, and I were dancing extremely wildly. We were running up and down the aisle, sliding and diving, and just nutty stuff. So in the middle of 500-person kirtan, Prabhupada stops the Guru Puj. Literally stops the Guru Puj. Mahabudhi calls me up. What is this? This is not how Vaishnavas dance. And he turned to Brahmana